Hello everybody and welcome back to Sibos TV. It's nice to have you back with us again. In this program, we're going to be talking about the subject of SEPA. We'll be revisiting that subject and find out whether the EU Commission's proposal to set an end date for SEPA will actually lead to widespread adoption. Well, joining us in the studio here on level 700 of the South Building to discuss these issues are Ben Poole. Actually, should I start with Ben at the very end? Ben Poole, Sibos TV's business editor. Also with us is Gerard Hartsink. He is the chairman in the middle of the European Payments Council. He's also a senior advisor to the managing board at ABN AMRO. And last but not least, Hansjörg Nymphius. He's the chairman of the European Banking Association and director of market infrastructures and global transaction banking at Deutsche Bank and a SWIFT board member. So definitely very important. Okay, gentlemen, nice to have you with us. What I like to do, because we have delegates here from all over the world, some of them probably don't really interact with this concept of SEPA. So let me go to you, Ben, first of all, and ask you, what exactly is SEPA and what does it mean in practice?
Okay, well, very basically, Kavita, SEPA stands for the Single Euro Payments Area. The aim of SEPA is to remove any distinction between national and cross-border payments. So they really want to remove any technical or commercial or legal barriers preventing the free flow of payments across borders within the EU. Now, the end date is quite interesting because quite recently a lot of people were talking about maybe SEPA fatigue, you know, the whole ongoing implementation process, but I think this proposed end date could be just the tonic that SEPA's looking for.
Sure, and Hansjörg, is it going to be the tonic? Is it going to lead to widespread adoption?
Yes, I think I'm pretty confident that with the end date we will see SEPA happen. And actually I think the end date is the last piece missing so that people adopt.
And Ben, you were at that session on SEPA earlier this morning. Apparently it was standing room only. You knew that it would generate that much interest. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was absolutely packed this morning. You had to get there early to get a seat, so that's probably quite a good tip for the rest of Sibos as well. We had a great selection of banking executives and also someone from the European Central Bank talking about the end date, the challenges around getting to that end date. And actually after the session I caught up with the moderator, Alec Nakamuli, who's the Global Payments Executive at IBM, and I specifically put the point to him, what does the end date specifically mean for banks? So let's take a look at what he had to say.
It basically means that they've actually got to start moving. Up until now, we were saying we don't know when it's going to happen. We can't really start planning until we know what is the date. And actually, if you remember, the general banking community was actually asking for a regulation to force them. So we now have a deadline. It is, we believe, let's say first quarter 2014. Let's stop talking. Let's getting down to action.
So Alec Nakamuli there from IBM speaking to our very own Ben Poole earlier today at the SEPA session. Gerard, if I could come to you now, I mean, he said it quite clearly, you know, let's stop talking, bankers, let's start acting. Are we going to run the risk then, because people in different countries have been moving at different levels, different rates, if you like. Some people have been moving ahead with some of the implementation and other people haven't. So don't we now run the risk that instead of having an EU-wide SEPA, which is what everybody wants, we end up with fragmentation in the market and we have a lot of mini SEPAs?
I don't believe so. If you analyze the rollout of the euro was also not implemented at the same time in currently 17 countries. So it's true that in some communities the SEPA rollout is much further down the road than in other communities. But as long as everyone sticks to the rules and the technical standards, the fragmentation concern is not so challenging, I believe.
So what seems to be the problem though? Why aren't they sticking to the rules, and you know, what are the problems and issues on their side?
All banks, but also the buy side, corporates, SME, public administration have to change their ERP systems, and there are practices in the different communities, and sometimes you run the risk that the banking community together with their customers like to continue certain practices. So we have to change. We have a common future but a different history. But as long as everyone sticks to the rules and the technical standards, the risk of fragmentation is pretty low.
Okay, so we're going to come to you, Hansjörg, and talk a little bit more about roadblocks in a second. But before we come to Hansjörg, Ben, you were at the session. We heard a lot about roadblocks. Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, in the discussion that we had, quite a few challenges came up, some of which we've already touched upon in this discussion, you know, around corporate migration, public authority migration to the SEPA instruments and scheme. Also, you know, the burden on debtor banks, how can that be managed? And also, what do you do with niche payment systems, legacy payment systems, the whole cost implication that's in that area. So lots of topics under discussion.
Hansjörg, what do you do with niche payment systems and legacy payment systems, legacy systems? A lot of roadblocks there. How do you think these could be addressed?
I think the key is here to really get going, get the mainstream settled, and try to either retire the niche products or move them into the standard that has been developed for SEPA. And by this you can overcome the roadblocks. And I think from that perspective, the earlier we can switch off the old legacy, the better, because that's a cost burden, nothing else.
Yeah. Do you find that though, I mean, one of the comments that has been raised is the fact that maybe, you know, not enough has been done to educate the market on how much of the payment system has actually moved over to the SEPA side. And maybe if people felt that, you know, they are sort of lost on the bus, if you see what I mean, that might be a little catalyst for them to start moving.
Yeah, I think that you can only do so much of education without the practical piece with it. So I think the point of education is that we now need the practical side of it. So let's get going, and then as we walk, we learn more about the practical side of things. So I think the training is very well done, and we need to just get the thing going.
I want to ask both of you because, you know, one of the key reasons why towards moving to SEPA is always rolled out is this idea of more efficiency, less cost. You know, people and banks and everyone, all the players are going to benefit from that. But from their side, they're seeing a lot of cost and investment that they're going to have to make, and maybe the benefits are not really going to outweigh those costs. What would you say to them as they leave Sibos 2011? What message do you really want to drive home to them? I'm going to ask that to each of you, but
SEPA is a long-term thing, so don't look at your benefits or your income in the next year, rather look at it as a strategic decision that brings you into a next level of infrastructure that allows to build for more modern payment services on top of it, and that's the idea. They have to think about it in the long term.
Opening the markets was very beneficial for a lot of corporates, but also on the buy side of corporates and consumers. And that means that if you continue with the model that in every community we have our own payment practices for the euro, over time we add the cost. So over time we are able to reduce the cost base of the whole industry in the end for the benefit of our customers.
What kind of time frame are we talking to? Because I think people, you know...
If really we are able to make the change, the transformation at the end Feb 2014, then probably it will take a couple of years. But it is also dependent on the behavior of, for instance, public administration. Do they knock on the door of a lot of banks in Europe to deliver them payment services? Are corporates really eager to reflect once more on that structure of their cash management, to collect money, but also to pay money throughout Europe?
And then one of the other criticisms that we've heard when we're dealing with this discussion of SEPA has been the fact that this has really been a conversation amongst bankers. But you know, you have large retailers, you have a lot of other people that are not at the table to find out just exactly how this is going to be affecting them and what exactly it's going to mean for them. What would you say to those criticisms?
Very easily. I mean, we have been in conversation with our customers all the years since the first discussion on SEPA. And if we wouldn't know what our customers really need, then I think we wouldn't be in business anymore. So in other words, I think with that communication between us as service providers and the corporates, we have done a whole lot of education, working together with them, and out of that, the interbank piece has been designed so that it caters for the customer needs. I think we have done a pretty good job in that.
Do you want to come
Not only individual banks at European level or at national level, we're talking to the customers, but at national level, in the majority of the 17 Euro countries, there is a well-established SEPA Council, National SEPA Council, and over there are the representatives of, among more, corporates, SMEs, public administration. And a similar body currently exists at European level, the so-called SEPA Council. So from an EPC perspective, we already talked to the representative of the European Association of Corporates for 5-6 years. So, but it is also their task to communicate to their client base, their membership base throughout Europe. And there are some points to improve from their side.
Okay, well, Ben, I'm going to come back to you because SMEs, all this idea of middle tier and SMEs adopting SEPA and this idea of corporate migration. You spoke with Alec about that. Tell us some of the things that you heard.
Yes, yeah, no, I caught up with Alec about that earlier this morning, and he definitely found one of the key issues is in that mid-cap region. So let's take a look at what he said.
Well, I think as we said on the panel, the problem is the middle tier. The very large corporates, their software providers, the ERP systems have already implemented the SEPA schemes and the XML. For the very small, SMEs, independents, they're going to be using internet banking, so it's going to be transparent to them. The problem is going to be the SMEs, the middle tier. And actually it was very encouraging that most of the banks, all of the banks actually on the panel, the three were saying that they've already started a campaign of education with their corporates. They're bringing them in, they're going to help them. We've got confirmed that nobody's going to go to prison if they implement conversion services. So I think we're in the right track. But however, remember the last question who came from this gentleman from the pharma industry is, at the moment we've got 2 or 3 solutions and we actually need to know what is it going to be and by when.
Alec Nakamuli there from IBM speaking to our very own Ben Poole. We've got about another 3 minutes left on this program. Before I go back to Ben to get some final thoughts on this session, I want to ask both of you, final thoughts from you on exactly what is needed. Who needs to do what to make SEPA a success? Where do you feel there is a leak in the system, a glitch that we really need to focus on?
I think key is the end date, so let's get it. Let's get the political side decide on it, and then let the public administration really come on board, not just with their words, but with their deeds, so that they provide a great chunk of payments, and then let's do it.
Okay.
Communication is key. That was concluded in the SEPA Council, but the follow-up of the conclusion of the SEPA Council is not visible. Ministers of finance are very European in Brussels, but not always when they are back home. Similar, governors of central banks are very European when they are Frankfurt, but not always when they are back at home. So they are very essential to communicate what the SEPA concept is all about and what the impact is for corporates, for SMEs, for public administration, and in the end for the consumers.
Okay, well thanks very much. And Ben, final thoughts from you.
Well, I'd really like to go back to the final point that was made at the panel discussion this morning on SEPA, which was brilliant, a very direct question that was put to every panelist. What's the one thing that can be done, and by whom, to ensure that SEPA implementation across the board happens in 2014? And when I caught up with Alec earlier, Alec Nakamuli at IBM, here's what he told me.
Okay.
There was not perhaps unanimity over one thing. What detected the majority was, it's the role of the public sector. The public sector in the European Union, as we know, is about 47 to 48% of GDP. If the public authorities don't move, paying social security payments, paying pensions, etc., it's not going to happen. And to a certain extent, don't forget that also they must be able to receive. So when you pay your tax, your VAT and all that, they must be ready to receive all those payments under the SEPA schemes.
Well, that was Alec Nakamuli there. He's the Global Payments Executive from IBM. He was speaking to our very own Sibos TV's Ben Poole earlier today at the SEPA session. Well, thank you all to all of our guests, both Hansjörg, Gerard and Ben Poole from Sibos TV. We'll leave it there. Remember, you can join us at 3:30 this afternoon here on Sibos TV for more of our afternoon programming. Now you can join the opening plenary. We'll be back later. Take care. Bye-bye.